Just because the US government is shut down doesn't mean that things aren't happening. Today, I'm going to get into some of those, like what's closed, what's open, how it hits business leaders and government contractors. I'm going to cover furloughed federal workers, possible back pay, air travel delays, and what to ask your contracting officer today. If you sell into DoD, civilian agencies, or rely on federal payments, this government shutdown 2025 update is an actionable checklist so you can protect your cash flow, teams, and contracts while Washington fights it out. Welcome to your 3-minute government contractor brief, where I'm going to cut through the noise and give you the government contracting news that you can use to win, compete, and grow. So let's dive in. Now, we are at political brinksmanship. There are legal skirmishes, and no surprise, this is resulting in multitude of headaches. So let's first cover down what does a shutdown actually mean for those who may not understand what it is. During a lapse in appropriations, agencies can't obligate funds except under narrow exceptions. Think life, safety, or protection of property. Anything that is necessarily implied to support those expected functions are also included. What does this actually mean? Well, routine work is going to pause. Urgent staff continues. Urgent stuff continues. And no, you're generally not going to get paid until Congress passes a bill. Even, this is key, even for work that is allowed to continue. Liquidation of those obligations normally waits for an appropriation. So what does this mean? If your CO says continue as accepted, expect invoices to stack up. Cash is coming later. It's not now. Build your working capital plan up accordingly. And this is going to be helpful because we then get into another thing that might actually delay any type of payments. We have layoff threats versus who's actually working. The White House threatened shutdown era layoffs very soon, signaling a harder edge than past lapses where furloughed federal employees eventually got back pay and came back to work. But at the same time, some agencies are reversing earlier cuts to keep critical operations moving. For instance, the General Services Administration rescinded RIFs and brought hundreds back to manage federal buildings, many on pay supported by carryover funds. What this means is that we're getting mixed signals at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, but operational pragmatism at 1800 F Street. Will federal workers get paid? Well, we don't actually know, and this comes in from the layoffs. Even for those federal employees who may not be laid off, there is a notable shift in tone from the White House versus previous administrations. This White House has sent out a memo reported by Axios, says that furloughed federal workers aren't entitled to back pay. In prior shutdowns, Congress typically passed back pay legislation after the fact. This memo signals that the administration currently isn't assuming that outcome. This is going to be key. So if you are a federal government employee coming back into the federal government, or you're waiting to get paid by the federal government by people who may not get back pay, well, you got to wait. You got to see. This gets into some more of those people who aren't being paid that are necessary. Aviation. Well, essential employees like air traffic controllers and TSA are working without pay, and the strain is showing. Multiple outlets have already reported thousands of delays at key hubs. Think Newark, Denver, Phoenix, Las Vegas, as staffing thins. There was even a 6-hour window with no tower controllers at Hollywood Burbank Airport. Let me say that again. There was even a 6-hour window with no tower controllers at Burbank Airport. Flights moved under the remote approach and pilot coordination, but delays piled up. If your business depends on air travel or time-sensitive shipments, assume that more slack is going to be needed and can think about contingency routing. We also have this whole big issue about the Hatch Act, and here's what's happening. There is a federal employee union that has sued the Education Department after some furloughed employees found their auto replies changed to blame Democrats for the shutdown. Raises potential Hatch Act issues. This is key, and this is something to be watching for. The other part, and this is near and dear to every veteran's heart, is that our troops are not being paid even though we are requiring them to serve and protect us. Fortunately, there are grassroots and veteran groups that are pushing Congress to pass a Pay Our Troops Act to keep service members' pay flowing throughout this stalemate and, in fact, any other future stalemates. If your company supports DoD's mission or base operations, please make sure to support this bill. If you just care about the people and the men and women who are protecting us and our country, please reach out, get them to pass this bill. Pass Our Troops Act is majorly important, and it's the right thing to do. There's also leadership churn that we should always be aware of. In the org chart of musical chairs, the Social Security Administrator is now been tapped as the first ever IRS CEO. This is a structural shakeup that could affect modernization priorities and vendor oversight when the government reopens. Keep an eye on any pending IRS IT and transformation efforts. Leadership signal changes can ripple into scopes and timelines. So when we get back to all of this, at the end of the day, what can you do? Well, You always got to map your risk. You have to get written direction. Remember, if it isn't written, it never happened. Protect your people. People are always going to be key. Assume that you have to protect your cash flow. That is going to be immediately important. And remember, this is not the end of the road. The road for here is this: the Senate votes keep failing. Pressure campaigns are rising, and the administration is signaling tougher labor outcomes than in past shutdowns. Even as some agencies quietly bring back people to keep the lights on, you got to expect a patchwork. Some programs are going to be on ice, others limping along. And aviation, well, we can already see what's happening with the government shutdown in that arena. If you found this useful, please hit subscribe and share with your operations and captures teams. I'll keep cutting through the noise so you can keep making clear, defensible calls without doom scrolling all night. Feel free to leave a question in the comments below, and I'll make sure to answer it.